Frankie blew up on him. Not me, but Frankie blew up on him and said, he didn't ask you that. He asked you if you're willing to go to war. It's a yes and no. Stop kissing his fucking ass.
So we're back with Sammy the Bull Gravano, and today we're going to take a look at the mobsters who served as captains under John Gotti from the period after Paul Castellano was murdered up until when Sammy and John were arrested in late 1990. The Gambino family was one of the largest families in New York and had approximately 20 captains. So Sammy, are you ready to check out a few of these names?
Sure.
Initially, after Paul Castellano's murder, you became captain. And then the following year, in 87, you were promoted to consigliere. And then following that, you became underboss. The man who succeeded you was Big Lou Valerio. Can you tell us a little bit more about Big Lou and why you selected him to be your successor as captain?
Well, I knew Louis Valerio most of my life as a kid growing up. He was a little older than me. He stood on the corner of 79th Street and Utrecht Avenue. We stood at a place right there, candy stores and clubs right around that, bars. And I knew him, his brother Butchie, who passed away, and his brother Frankie I grew up with. He was my age. We were, as kids, we were friends. So I knew him. I knew his father a little bit, because they lived right on 79th Street and Utrecht Avenue. And he was with Tato's crew. So when I took over the crew, Louis was there. I was essential in getting him made. He was really a good guy, tough guy, loyal guy to Tato, good friend of mine. So when it was time, I became the consigliere of the family. John asked me, "Who do you want to, take over? I can't have two positions, a captain and the consigliere." So I recommended Big Louis Valerio, and we made him a captain. And he was very, very good, very, very loyal. He was always around me. His crew took care of me, my protection, meetings, everything that I did. Louis literally wrapped his life around me. There was another guy who was in Tato's crew as well. He was put over to Frankie Chico's crew for a while. Vinny Oil wasn't a made guy, tough guy, owned an oil company. And he came in, and all the guys who were in Charlie Boy, Tato's son. So when I took over as captain, they were all with me. It was almost like nothing changed.
So another name, which you'll be familiar with, is Joseph Joe Butch Correo, who I believe took over from his father and was a captain before Gotti came to power.
Yes. And he had a brother named Augie, who was a made guy. He worked in the Copacabana for a while. He was a head waiter or head maitre d', and people were a little surprised when he became a made guy. But their father was a heavyweight, so all of that.
Vincent. Is it Vincent? Vinny?
Yeah, I didn't know the father,
Yeah.
But he was well known, and he had a cousin, Gus, who was Gus made some accusation about Frankie the Chico being bad, meaning that he might be an informant, which wasn't true at all. It was checked out 100 different ways. But when we took over Frankie the Chico, the first thing he said, "We're going to kill Gus." And he gave the hit to, I think he was there, and with Joe Watts. And they killed him right in Joe Butch's club on Mulberry Street. So Joe Butch was a nice guy. When we first started walking around, talking to people after the Castellano hit, I was armed all the time. Frankie the Chico called Joe Butch out of the club. Augie was in the club and he was coming out, and Joe Butch told him, stay in the club. And no, I got to come out. He started coming out. I put my hand in my jacket immediately. Joe Butch saw it. Frankie said, hold up, Sammy. Tell your fucking brother to walk back in the club. Augie says, I'm his brother. I said, listen, Augie, 2 more steps, you're not going to be anybody's brother. Get back in the fucking club. Your brother told you, Frankie told you, I'm telling you, turn around and get back in the club. It's none of your business. He went back in the club, and we talked with Joe Butch a little bit. We went around to each crew, each captain, telling them the old bullshit. We don't know what's going on, but don't carry guns. Don't do anything. Whatever you hear, report back to us. And but they all knew who did what. They weren't stupid. And so, yeah, I knew Joe Butch.
I believe his son was also involved in the life as well. Did you know? I think his name was Vincent.
He got made later after John was. Joe Butch put him in. He was a big, tall guy like him. He's a little more muscular than Joe Butch. You'll see him a couple of times helping John get out of the car and, pushing people out of the way. So his son got made too. We allowed that to happen.
Okay, so another one, a long-time captain, this guy, who allegedly used to drive for Carlo Gambino and was given his crew in around 1967, was James Jimmy Brown Filer. Obviously, we're very familiar with him. What were your thoughts on Jimmy Brown?
I didn't like him. There's a bunch of stories. Toto didn't like him. Paul used him a lot because, first of all, he was the head of the Garbage Association. And there was a lot of money coming from the association to the family. He had a club right next to Tommaso's restaurant. And Paul would go in Tommaso's. So he would go to the club all the time. There was a lot of meetings there. So he looked like he was a powerful guy. A lot of people thought he was a real powerful guy. He really wasn't. There's 2 or 3 incidents. I don't want to get into all of them. It'll take a while. I had problems with him a couple times. I didn't like him. Matter of fact, I told a story one time. A friend of mine, a female, someone in her family got killed. He tried to make this woman, and she wouldn't go for it. And he told Paul he thinks she's an informant or an FBI agent. Louis Melito got in touch with me and he said, Sam, you hear what this fucking guy is saying? And I went to Paul Castellano and I told him what happened with the story with him, that he was hitting on her, she wouldn't budge. And he come up with this bullshit story. I said, she's not. I know the whole family. I know what happened with the brother. And he says, are you sure? I said, I'm positive. And he told me, would you bank your life on that? I said, yes, I would. And I would like to go down and talk to him. He said, I know how you talk. You want to go and talk with him? Yes. Yes. And Paul, I'm not going to be polite. I know how you talk. Go ahead. Go. And I went and talked with him. And when I told this story, there's a couple of guys, the naysayers, said he would never talk like that to him. I did. And as a matter of fact, the girl is still alive. And she said, when you came down and questioned me if I ever talked to the agents or anything like that, right after that, Jimmy Brown wouldn't come near me. He mentioned your name once and he wouldn't even come near me. So I said, well, then I told her years later what happened. And so she says, I always wondered why he just pulled away from me, which was good. So I didn't like Jimmy. And there was another thing when Steinme died, was killed. There was a whole thing with that. I'll say that real quick. The guy was a Colombo guy. He was proposed to become a made guy, steroid freak. He went into a bar, the Magic Lantern, I think it was. Made guy in the Genovese family, owned it. He died, and his wife was running the place. And the Genovese were taking care of her, that nobody fucked with her. There was no problems with her. He went into that place, beat her up, slapped her around, took the money, and she knew Stymie, and the bars weren't too far apart. She went and talked to Stymie in Tally's bar, and as they were talking, the same guy walked into Tally's. And she screamed a little bit and said, "That's him." Stymie abused the shit out of him. The guy left. She left. The guy came back and killed Stymie. I found out who did what and what happened. The Genovese family got in touch with me, and they said, "Sammy, we're going to go after him for what he did to her. But you have preference. I know what you felt with Stymie. Stymie was proposed to become a made guy. You want the lead?" I said, "Yes, I'm going to kill the guy." And we went and talked with Paul, and Frankie DeChico was there, Tato was there, I believe John Gotti was there, I was there, Jimmy Brown was there, and Paul Castellano said, "I heard Stymie was very abusive towards the guy." Frankie DeChico exploded. He said, "Paul, this guy fucking beat up a woman who's a friend of ours, his wife, and robbed her. And then he came in the fucking joint. Stymie abused him. So you mean this guy could come back and just kill us?" No, I'm not saying that, Frankie. Take it easy. I'm not saying that. And then he said, "Well, the guy has proposed. I'm going to ask you a question. Are you willing to go to war if they don't want to give him up?" "Sammy, I know what you're going to say." "Well, let me say it. Yes, I'm willing to go to war." He asked Tato. Tato says, "Yes, I'm willing to go to war." John Gotti, "Yes, I'm willing to go to war." He asked Frankie DeChico, "Most definitely I'm willing to go to war." He asked Jimmy Brown, and Jimmy Brown, sucker asshole that he was, "Paul, whatever you want, I'll do whatever you want." Frankie blew up on him. Not me, but Frankie blew up on him and said, "He didn't ask you that. He asked you if you're willing to go to war. It's a yes and no. Stop kissing his fucking ass." Paul said, "Listen, no, Frankie, stop. Slow down." He said, "Jimmy, he's right. Stop kissing my fucking ass. I asked you a question. It's a yes or a no." Everybody was just looking at him, and he said, yeah, Paul, yes, I'm willing." I hated it. I despised him. So I told them little stories. That's why I didn't like him. But he was a captain, and he was a captain under John as well.
So the next one is a name you're obviously very familiar with, is Daniel Marino, who I believe was related to Carmine Lombardozzi. I think he was given his own crew in late 1980s, so to speak. But can you tell us a bit more about Danny Marino?
No, Danny Marino was never had, well, he had a couple of guys with him. He was a made guy. He became a captain after the Castellano hit. John didn't even want to make him a captain. We talked to him, me and Frankie. He made him a captain after that.
Did you like him?
He wasn't a bad guy, but I found out later on, we all did, that Gas Pipe had told him and Jimmy Brown that we were going to get killed. Frankie DeChico, me, John. And he didn't tell us nothing. They told Jimmy, don't say nothing, but Chin is thinking that you could be the boss. When Frankie DeChico was blown up in the car, I was there, I took him out. When I walked back, there was 20, 30 guys across the street. Jimmy Brown and Danny Marino said to me, "Sammy, we're going to go home. If you need us, we'll call you." A guy, Paulie Zach, turned around and said, "Need you? Go home? He needs you right fucking now." I told Paulie Zach, who was a good guy, I said, "Paulie, hold up. Last thing we need right now, Frankie was in a police van on its way to the hospital. I was waiting for word from John Gotti. My brother-in-law went to give him a call. So they kind of knew that this thing was going to happen. Jimmy Brown and Danny Marino, and never told us. If they would have told us, maybe that would have never happened. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about it before.
Yeah.
How about this guy, Anthony Tony Baker Napolitano? Do you know much about him? And he took over from an old time, a guy called Arthur Chink Leo back in '65, and Napolitano died in 1987. So I'm not sure how much you would have known about him.
I knew him, but I didn't know much about him. The guy he took over from, you said he was in 1955. I was born in 45.
1965, yeah, Chink Leo, Arthur Chink
Yeah,
Leo.
I didn't know him at all. I knew Tony Baker. He was a good guy, mild guy, moderate guy. And he died. I don't know much about him.
And obviously, one you are very familiar with is obviously Tommy Gambino, who ran a crew from the early 1980s.
Yes,
Did you like Tommy?
I did. He was a mild-mannered guy. I got a couple of stories, quick ones. He was Carlo Gambino's son. Carlo Gambino didn't make any of his kids or anybody. Paul made him. It was his nephew. He made him as a made guy, and then made him as a captain because he had the distributor of the clothing in Manhattan. So to give him some rank against other people who were in that business, he made him a captain. He was a very mild-mannered guy. One time at John's party, John was abusing the fuck out of him, and there was about 20 of us in the bar, and I had walked over and I told him, I said, John, everybody's here. It's your birthday. Everybody's listening to you, bro. The guy's a skipper. He's a captain. Come on, go to the bar. It's your birthday. Do this at another time, another place. And he kind of agreed and walked to the bar. Tommy, on the way passing me, he says, Sammy, I'll never forget that. I appreciate that. But he was a mild-mannered guy, more of a racketeer. Wasn't a tough guy at all. He's actually, a lot of people don't notice, when me, John Gotti, and Frankie LaCasio got arrested, so did he. He's actually the fourth guy on the indictment. The judge severed his case. It was something about Shylock or something. Severed the case and gave him a separate case. That's why most of the world don't know he was even on that case. But he wasn't a bad guy. Sociable guy, racketeer, no tough guy talk or anything like that.
Okay, how about Josie Zingaro? I think he took over Paolo Gambino's crew in about 1974, and Josie died in 1987. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with him.
No, I'm not too familiar with him,
Okay.
Jose Zingaro. But I know the name, and I know that he was a captain. I don't know whose crew he took over. I don't know what he did. I didn't have any reactions or transactions with him. He was low key.
And one I know you definitely know is Joseph Piney Armone. What were your thoughts on Piney?
Piney was a great guy. He was in the Pizza Connection case originally. He was very tight with the old timers, loved them. He was a lovable guy, really a good guy. I think he got a little simple towards the end. When John was arrested, he called me, and when Frankie was dead, we made him the underboss. The family was vibrating that guys were getting killed. So we wanted him to settle down the old timers, and John made him a captain. I agreed to bring all the old timers in, relax them, and he did that job. At one time, I went partners with Louis DeBono. On the second time, they wanted me to go partners with him again. I didn't want to do it. And he called me in and he says, me and Angelo Ruggiero, he says, Sammy, I got a way we're going to take the heat off of John. And now John had so much heat on him. I said, okay, how are you going to do that? He said, do you remember that soldier? He was under Ronald Reagan. I can't think of his name right now. North, Oliver North. He was a colonel. He was involved in all that political stuff. He said, if we kill him, the tension's going to go over there. So I want to give you the contract to kill him. You want me to kill a soldier? I think it was a colonel, Colonel North. He said, yeah. So I says, all right, I'll work on it. And as I was walking out with Angelo started laughing. He said, you're going to go kill him? I said, fuck no. I'm not going to do that. But I'm appeasing him. I'll just tell him I'm working on it. I can't get it done. But I'm not going to kill him. That's crazy. To take the heat off for John, this guy, I'm not going to kill this guy. For what? It don't even make sense. So he was that type of guy, but I didn't want to insult him. And he was the underboss at that time after Frankie. And I respected him. I liked him. He was part of the whole fist. He joined us very early in the game when we were talking about killing Paul. He joined us. And he was the guy who was going to appease the old timers. That's what we needed him for. He did have a little bit of a crew. When he went to underboss, I think we promoted Handsome Jack.
That's what I was about to talk about him next. Yeah, that's what my understanding as well. What
Yeah,
was Handsome Jack like? So that's for everyone. That's John Handsome Jack Giordano.
yeah. I think
What was
whoever
he like?
called him Handsome Jack, I think he paid the guy off. But he was a good guy. He wasn't a bad guy, but he was a little crazy. There was a night he called me up. He wanted to go. He had a couple of broads. He wanted to go to Atlantic City. I had just got home. It was late. I went with him, and we gambled. We were with the broads. We had some fun. We came back, and he went to John and told John. He said, Sammy as the underboss. I was the underboss already. He's a great guy, bro. I went with a couple of broads to Atlantic City with him last night. I had a blast with him. And John said that was the first time something came up when John said, why'd you go with him? You're on my side. Now, when Jackie told me that, it struck me in a weird way. You're on our side. What do you mean, your side, my side? There's no sides. We're together. But that was one of the first things that came out about talking about sides. And
Okay.
first time I heard anything like that. So I like Jackie. He was tough on some of his people. One of his people shot him. He became a cripple, I think. I didn't know who did it. It was one of his guys. I don't think he was a made guy, but he was abusing this guy all the time. The guy shot him.
Okay.
He survived anyway.
So let's move on to another captain, alleged captain, Anthony Tony C. Carminati. He took over from Joseph Paterno in around 1979. Are you familiar with Tony C. at all?
Tony C?
Yeah, Anthony Tony C. Carminati. No?
No, not really.
And there's another one slightly obscure. He was a New Jersey-based guy, Michael Mandaglio. He was a Jersey-based guy, and he was succeeded by Bobby Cabert. Did you know Michael Mandaglio at all?
No, what is that? Bobby Cabert, who succeeded him?
Yeah, so Michael Mandaglio was the New Jersey-based captain until the late 1980s. He was involved in labor racketeering, like I said, New Jersey-based. I think it was quite close to Sam DeCavalcanti for a period. And then he was succeeded by Bobby Cabert, who I know you do know.
Yeah. Bobby, we did a piece of work together. John sent me on a piece of work with him. We did it. John wanted to know how he conducted himself. He was the shooter. He conducted himself. He listened. He took orders. He listened to everything I said. We took a guy out. I went to John and said, he did everything he had to do. He's a tough guy. He had a little bit of a reputation of being a tough guy. We made him a captain. Later on, he did something with the Iceman in prison and got me pinched. I cooperated against him. He went to prison. When he was in prison, he was with the Iceman. He told the Iceman about a story about killing a cop years ago. He knew about the story, obviously. He fed it to the Iceman. The Iceman went to the government and said that he did the hit with me. Bobby set that all up so that he could get a new trial because I lied to the government and I never told them. I didn't lie to the government. I never did the hit to begin with. So I didn't even know the fucking Iceman. But that was Bobby Cabert. And he was a good guy. I mean, up until that, for me, I had a little respect for him. And I'm going to eventually tell that in my scripted show. So
That's it for part 1. Look out for part 2, where Sammy Gravano continues his review of John Gotti's captains. I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.